Ritu.
And I'm Sarah.
And together we are
Everyday Intellectuals. Today, we will be talking about disaster preparedness. We're inspired by Jenny Offill's Weather. This is a book that draws a parallel between everyday responsibilities and preparing for impending doom. Ritu, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think this is an interesting topic. We're seeing a lot of natural disasters happening around the world. You have the Australian brush fires, hurricanes. I mean, right now in California, there are wildfires. So it's definitely relatable. And, natural disasters are definitely imminent. It's not uncommon. So it's something that we should be prepared for. And now in terms of jumping back to the book, there's one thing that really stood out to me, and it was a conversation between the main character, Lizzie, and her mentor, Sylvia. And, Sylvia mentions that the only way to really prepare for imminent doom is to get rich. Very, very rich, which is like a very unreasonable solution.
Yes, sage advice.
Yes.
That was honestly probably one of the things I disliked most about the book, was just that there weren't really very many solutions, and the solutions that were posited were super unrealistic. It was either build a bunker, like a doomsday bunker, or fly to Mars.
Well, I mean, companies like Virgin Galactica are trying to commercialize going to space.
Oh, God.
Yeah. You can actually reserve a seat for $200,000, which is pretty ridiculous considering it hasn't even been completed yet. Like, there's no actual commercial plane going to Mars.
Oh, let's be clear. It's absurd for many reasons.
Yeah.
That's just one of them.
Well, the fact that we're treating going to Mars like an amusement park, I think that's like the biggest ridiculous factor in all of this.
So many issues I have with that. Yeah. But the first one that kind of jumps out at me is the price tag, $200,000. That's insane. How many people realistically can even afford that?
I mean, not many.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't, for sure.
Right.
Sure. But definitely, I guess, for me, what's crazy about that is the rich basically get to, let's say the Earth is destroyed or whatever, so they basically get to jump to Mars, and what, the poor people are left to die?
Basically, yeah, that's basically it.
That's basically what we're trying to say. Cool.
Well, and we're looking about it in this like weird apocalyptic future, but that's already kind of the case, right? Because poor people are disproportionately affected by natural disasters anyway, not only in terms of like local communities, but also in a global sense, right? Like poor countries tend to be the hardest hit by natural disasters because they tend to be the least prepared, and they also tend to have the hardest time bouncing back.
Yeah, they're definitely ill-equipped to recover. And no matter how many, relief programs there are, it's still an issue.
Right.
Going back to more of a general sense, I think we just lack preparedness overall. I mean, take America. I did some preliminary research, and I saw that 2/3 of American households don't even have a disaster emergency plan.
That's abysmal.
Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, and then even half of that are reported to not having disaster supplies at home. So you're running into two problems. One, you're not even having a plan, and two, you don't have supplies.
Right. So it's a pretty grim landscape.
Yes.
Are there any positives? Like, what are the solutions?
So, I mean, I guess there's really two. One, which is the two things we touched about, having an emergency plan, discussing that with your household, and just that communication is very important. And two, having disaster relief kits, which are just survival kits that you can take with you in case of flooding, fires, earthquakes, hurricanes, and so forth. So I think those are the two main things.
How can we make an effective disaster preparedness plan?
So communication, I think, is really important because we live in California. We have earthquakes. We know the earthquake drill. Go under our desk, run to the doorway.
Yeah, go outside. And that's the thing, is having those conversations early on is so important, because generally what happens when there's an emergency is people freeze. And some people even panic, but it's really hard in that situation to find your bearings and figure out what to do, which is why having those conversations beforehand when you're in a calmer state of mind, and then repeatedly having those conversations is really, really effective. Just a few days ago or like a couple weeks ago, we had an earthquake here.
Yeah.
And you and I like immediately knew what to do.
Yeah.
It was, for me, it was muscle memory. And like, granted, the fact that infrastructure has improved and like buildings are much more earthquake proof now than they used to be, but there's still like, just from being a kid and like doing earthquake drills in school, my body just automatically knows how to protect itself.
Yeah.
And so communication definitely super, super key.
Well, do you think there's enough? Do we have, talk to your family about exit strategies? Like, do you have an exit plan of like in your house, like what happens when you have an emergency? Like,
where do you meet up?
Where do you meet up? Do you have like numbers? Like all of those, I feel like are very important conversations. I'm very happy that it is muscle memory. Like how many times have we had earthquakes and we immediately run to the door, go under the desk, and then after we ask a family member, are you okay? And we shout from upstairs.
And then half the time they didn't even know there was an earthquake.
Yeah.
Usually.
Yeah, exactly. But it's the steps after. And I think that's what's part of the emergency plan is knowing like, do we have emergency contact? Who's your next source of kin where you can call in case of an emergency? So I think those are really important. And I do feel like in schools, we should definitely have conversations of like, hey, maybe have that with your household members.
You have a really, really good point about having the number. I think that's probably one of the first things I'm going to do is like save those emergency numbers in my phone, but also like on a piece of paper in case I lose my phone or run out of battery and put it in whatever my supplies are.
Yeah.
So I know who are the emergency services I can call if I'm ever, God forbid, in that scenario.
Yeah. And I think those are just important conversations to have.
What does it take to make a disaster preparedness kit, and where can we find them?
I talked about the statistics earlier that less than half the people in America don't even have disaster supplies at home. And I think you can get, I've seen so many ads on like Instagram and you see them on TV, but there are disaster supply kits that you can get, like Judy.
Like pre-made that you can buy.
Yeah. The problem with it is I looked at some of them and they're expensive. There's one that's $1,000.
Well, who is buying this?
I don't know. This is some man versus wild crap. Like, what is this? I don't understand.
What?
I feel like even if I bought it, I wouldn't even know what to do with it.
What do you mean?
Like, there's so much, like, there's like, it's just all survival stuff. Like, I would just
you would use it to survive.
No, 100%. But like, what if you don't? Do they have an instruction packet inside? Like, I don't even know.
Like, what are some of the weird things in there?
Okay, so just going to the list that I have. Obviously, the funniest part is they have long-term gourmet meals, but they're all in packets. So I'm not entirely sure how gourmet that is. They have like cube stoves. Some of the more complicated ones are like emergency hand cranks. They have solar radar. Honestly, I wouldn't know what to do with a lot of stuff. Nylon utility cord. I'm trying to picture in my mind what I would do with this, and I'm just totally at a loss.
It's like also very possible that maybe these are like very simple things and you and I are just stupid and don't know what I feel like as you're saying nylon, I'm like, do you know what this sounds like? Something you could probably very easily buy at Home Depot that's very simple, and you and I are just schmucks and don't know what it is.
That begs the question, like, do I need to spend, $1,000 or, some of the more reasonable ones are like $180. Do I need to buy this? Like, why can't I just create my own survival kit? Because American Red Cross has put out, a survival kit list, and that includes like water, food, flashlight, battery, personal hygiene, multi-purpose tools, and, so forth and so on. But the problem is you have to constantly update it. Like, at one point, like, you can't have perishables that you have like 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's the thing is like you can try to have as much of non-perishables as you want, but eventually water does go stagnant, or like even canned food expires eventually. It's a concern.
And then also, do we have to research like survival skills? I'm a little confused. In the book, the main character Lizzie, she Googles all these different survival methods and like doomsday preparation.
Yeah, like making candles out of like tuna cans and stuff.
Yeah. I don't know, like, is that something that we should be doing on an everyday basis? This is a lot.
It is a lot. See, that's where I started to have mixed feelings, because as much as preparation is so important and it can really change the situation that you end up being in, there has to be a limit. Because in the book, she starts to really lose her sanity and her mental health takes a nosedive because she's just so anxious all the time, worrying about things that she can't really properly anticipate debate and that she can't even really control. Like, for all of her research, at the end of the day, she gets winded trying to run after a bus, and she realizes no matter how much she prepares, she's probably going to be one of the first people to die anyway. So like what was the purpose of all of this emotional strain?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think it's a fine balance. Obviously, it's not smart to be thinking about doomsday every day. You're just adding a lot more anxiety to your everyday, responsibilities. But I just think having just a general awareness of like, okay, maybe storing a number, or like just doing some extra small steps, having that conversation like we talked about earlier, creating your survival kit. Like, those are small things that you can do that don't take a lot of time, but you'll never know if you need it.
Right.
And if you don't, you're great. But like, if you, in case you do, it's always better to be prepared than not.
Right. And also just look into what are the local resources, because they definitely are out there. Like, I've gone to like city events and seen tables for disaster preparedness. So there are programs out there. It's pretty easy to look them up online. And, hopefully there's also, you can find some local resources for people who maybe can't afford to buy and create their own kits at home. It's like specific to each local community.
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear from you guys. Like, what resources exist in your communities? What kinds of preparation tactics do you have?
Yeah, we'd love to have some advice. Obviously, we can ramp up our survival skills.
Yes, please offer your suggestions and just generally let us know what you think about our discussion. If you like this discussion, you can follow us on social media. We're Everyday Intellectuals on Instagram and YouTube. On Twitter, we're Everyday Intellectuals with only one E in the word every. We'll talk to you guys soon. Bye!